All right, let's get this started. 5 Year Club video number 62. Today I wanted to go through my analysis of a problem that somebody posted on Facebook on one of the financial groups I follow. This is a person analyzing a mortgage payoff, and I wanted to show you the way that I think about it so that when you see similar situations, you can ask yourself some of the same questions and be able to frame the problem and put it into a certain context. I think a lot of times because people don't regularly look at this stuff, when they see a problem like this, they don't know how to even begin thinking about it. And so I wanted to hand you a couple of questions that you can ask yourself when you can look at a situation like this to quickly inform yourself about what's going on and what should be done. Because a lot of times when somebody asks like a financial question about one thing like retirement, you can find out pretty quickly that actually retirement's not their problem. Their problem is actually savings rate, or their problem is actually income, or whatever it is. But you have to dig sometimes to figure that out. Sometimes you have to dig to figure out that their retirement fund selection is not actually an issue in their life. Their issue in their life is they don't know how much they need to save, period. Anyway. All right, so the post says, I have 7 years left to pay on my mortgage, $54,000 remaining balance, but at the rate I'm paying now, it will be paid off in 4 years. My current interest is 4.5%, and I am thinking of refinancing if I could get a lower interest rate. Do you agree that it's a good decision considering currently mortgage is taking up 45% of my income, and by refinancing and still paying extra, I can pay it off in 7 years, but with less stress as my monthly payments will go down. Also, I have more money to put towards my retirement. Okie doke. So, what we see here is 7 years left to pay off the mortgage. And the mortgage is taking up 45% of income. That's a big problem. 45% of income is way too high. 4.5% on interest, I'm not actually sure that they're going to get a much lower rate than 4.5 because rates have ticked up recently. But I am not a mortgage broker, so perhaps they could get a better rate. If they refinance, like say they refinance on like a 15-year or something like that, then they could still get a good rate or a similar rate to 4.5, and they can still pay down extra on that 15-year and still be done in 7. It would just give them more flexibility. And since the mortgage is taking up 45% of the income, they definitely might need that flexibility because that's just way too high. In fact, if I was looking at someone like this, I would say, are you sure you have a mortgage problem? I think you might have an income problem here. All right, so the question that I wanted to ask is what percentage of your net worth will be in the house once it is paid off? And the reason why I'm asking this question in particular is because I can see from this post a $54,000 mortgage over 7 years is a big deal to this person. That's 45% of income it's taking up. This person doesn't make very much money. And so if they don't make much money, it's likely they don't have much money. If they don't have much money, I'm worried about them paying off their mortgage because I'm worried that too much of their net worth will be in the mortgage. And if you have too much of your net worth in the mortgage, there's not enough net worth producing income in investments. And you need income to buy food. You can't buy food with housing equity. It's not liquid. So yeah, number one, 45% of income being spent on housing is bad. That's way beyond the 25% or less I suggest. And she says close to 70% of her net worth is going to be in this mortgage when she pays it off. That's crazy because 70% of your net worth, especially being in a primary residence where you're not renting it out and you're not getting a rental cash flow, you're really not making a lot of money on average in housing, period. Like, if you look at the long-term housing equity return, and you take it across the entire, say, United States or entire Earth or whatever you want to do, and you look over a period of 100 years, The returns from housing equity are, and that means like the value of the property itself, are like maybe 1% above inflation. So if inflation's at 3%, you're getting a 4% return while the market's doing like 9. So you're really just giving up a tremendous amount of money by having 70% of your net worth be in housing instead of in stocks. Obviously, you have to live somewhere. And so if 70% of your net worth is in your primary residence, and your primary residence is the cheapest, smallest thing that you can find anywhere, then you're just poor. And that's just, you're not going to live on the street and invest your money in stocks. That's not going to make any sense. You're just poor. But if 70% of your net worth is in your primary residence, and your primary residence is a $400,000 property, well, then I think you need to move if you're planning on retiring and you're not working and getting an income, because you need to free up $200,000 more to make money for you in the stock market. That's what that means. Let's look at some other things that would impact this situation now. If this person receives, so this person said, yeah, the reason why my income is so low, this was somewhere else in the thread, is because I got disabled. I suffer from a disability, so my income dropped to about half of its previous value, and that's the reason why I'm having trouble paying this mortgage. If you receive a disability payment, we can evaluate that disability payment or that fixed payment, whatever the entitlement payment is, we can evaluate that as if it was net worth. So what we do to do that is we just work the problem backwards. So if this person is getting $1,000 a month from disability, let's say, $12,000 a year total, then we can say, well, if I had a nest egg that was going to produce $12,000 a year, how big would it need to be? It needs to be about 25 times $12,000. So it needs to be about 25 times the amount of cash it produces every year. So we're talking about a nest egg value of, say, $300,000. And then what we do is we say, okay, well, what would the percentage of the theoretical net worth be given this fixed income cash flow? So if before, at the beginning of the problem, if the initial numbers were just, it's a $300,000 house and say $100,000 in savings, this was supposed to be 1,000, I'm sorry, then yeah, the house is going to be 75% of net worth in that case. And so it's going to be an uncomfortable percentage of net worth. If we add 300,000 to this as a representation of the disability payments that are being received, now we're talking about the number being 300,000, not out of 400,000, but out of 700,000. And 300,000 out of 700,000 means the house is 43% of net worth. 43% of net worth is still above the 25% of net worth that is suggested for a healthy kind of risk distribution in your net worth / income distribution in your net worth. And this is and obviously, especially because this is not an income producing property. It's not a rental property. If you had rental properties, I'd be comfortable with those being higher than 25% of your net worth because they're producing cash flows from the rental income. But because it's just primary residence, I want it to be below 25%. Even in the case that we consider your disability payment, this is still 43% of net worth, so I'm still unhappy with it. But that's certainly better than 70%, and I think it's a more valuable number to evaluate where you're at and what's going on in your financial life. Let's say that she had a $2,000 income per month from fixed payments from the government. Well, then we would say 300,000 plus 400,000 plus a total of 600,000. Now we'd be talking about, something out of $1 million and be down to 30%. So 300,000 out of $1 million would be 30% of net worth would be house. And in that case, I'd probably be like, well, since you're getting $2,000 in disability payments per month, this house being $300,000 isn't that big of a deal, especially considering it's paid off. I'm not thrilled with it. That's not a thrilling financial position for me, but it's not a terrible financial position either, at least not terrible as far as 45% of money going to paying for housing or 70% of net worth being in the primary residence. 70% of net worth being in a primary residence is okay if you're, say, 25 or you're 30 and living in a very high housing cost state like New York or California. But if you're approaching retirement, 70% is not okay. And if you have other housing options where you can sell your housing and get 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 out and then invest that in dividend stocks or something else that will produce you a good cash flow in retirement, that's something that you want to do even if you really like your house, because you need the cash flow in old age when you're disabled to pay for food, to pay for medical costs, and to pay for the stuff that you actually want to do with your life instead of just hanging out in some huge expensive house. We only get so many years, and there's a lot of stuff outside of the house that's fun to do. All right, I hope that was helpful to do your ratio checks when you see situations. Say, what percentage of take-home pay, what percentage of gross pay, and what percentage of net worth is it now, and what percentage of net worth will it be? And when you find those out, see if there are any red flags, see if somebody is making decisions that put them at uncomfortable ratios, either now or later. That's it. Hope you enjoyed video number 62. Have a fabulous evening.